Hi, this is Betty Plus Books, and today I want to talk about my favorite books of the year and a couple of reading stats that I had for this year. I read 62 books and 26,000 pages this year, and most of that was chunked toward the second half of the year. I didn't really read much in the first half of the year, but once I got on BookTube, I kind of started reading more because you kind of feel motivated to, and you're getting all these great recommendations. So I'm actually not looking at my list of books that I read this year to come up with these because I want to focus on stuff that has been comes to mind as really memorable without reminding. When I rate a book, when I'm done reading it, I often rate it based on my initial feeling at the very end of the book, which is often based on just the impact of the very end of the book. Whereas I feel like the books that are really overall deserve a favorites rating aren't necessarily books that are rated 5 stars initially, but they're books that have stuck with me through the rest of the year. That being said, because I don't have a list on me, I'm probably more likely to remember stuff that I've read more recently. So if this seems weighted toward stuff that I read in the second half of the year since I started BookTube, part of that is definitely going to be because that was more recent and that's what I remember. But one of the books that I read early in the year that I really loved was Glennon Doyle's Untamed. So this is a memoir of her kind of breaking down her family structure to be more true to who she is and herself. She gets divorced, she gets married to a woman after I think 20 years of marriage to her ex-husband, and just there's a lot of upheaval in her life. And she talks a lot about discovering herself and making space for her own happiness and her own true self, as opposed to kind of letting that go in favor of what she thinks other people want or need. One fiction book from earlier in the year that I really loved is the book The Likeness by Tana. This is a book in the series The Dublin Murder Squad, which is about a group of police officers in Dublin that investigate murder. And in this one, the person who gets murdered is basically the spitting image of this particular female police officer in the force, and she goes undercover acting as this person who's been murdered to try and figure out who actually murdered this person. And it's really, really interesting. I love it because it has a lot of dark academia vibes. The people involved are mostly grad students in a school, and it has that kind of feel, although it doesn't really have anything that actually happens inside a school setting. I actually had a lot of dark academia that I liked this year, but probably my favorite that kind of fits into that category is Ace of Spades. So this is more of a thriller book, and it's all over BookTube. I did a review of it ages ago, which I will link. Earlier in the year, I also read Gideon the Ninth, which is by Tamsyn Muir. I never know how to say her last name, but I just really enjoyed the scenery of this book and the fact that they're really entrenched in this society that is focused on death and necromancy. That's the central core of the society, which I thought was really cool. It has kind of a grimdark Warhammer 40k feel, if you're into that kind of thing. And it's funny, but it's also super dark, and I enjoyed that. One book that I really loved that I got from NetGalley for a review was Exposure by Greenberg. And this was pitched in the synopsis as kind of a for fans of Black Mirror, and I kind of agree with that. I've only watched a little bit of Black Mirror, but it has that vibe of someone's watching you. It's a little bit futuristic and kind of creepy and pretty dark. But I also, in terms of throughout the book, there's these descriptions of these exhibitions put on by a particular group. And those descriptions of those exhibitions really reminded me of the descriptions of the different tents in the night circus. So if you are a fan of stuff that's creepy and kind of Big Brother or something is watching you, sometimes happens in Black Mirror, but you also really liked that atmosphere and scenery of the night circus, I think you would really like this. And the most recent book that I read that I really enjoyed was Light from Uncommon Stars by, I think it's Ryka, Aoki. Kind of doing this off the top of my head, so if I got something wrong, sorry. But this is a book that features a trans girl who is excellent at the violin. It features a group of refugees from outer space running a donut shop. There's so much diversity in this book, and there's a lot of nuance about different people's experiences of being different and of being in an unfamiliar place. And it was really heartwarming and sad at the same time. There are definitely some pieces that might be a little bit triggering with regards to abuse and transphobia, so just be aware of that going into it. But in this book, I kind of got the vibe of a blend of Becky Chambers' Wayfarer series and Shauna Maguire's Wayward Children series. So if you like both of those, and you're okay with like a little bit more like emotionally troubling stuff happening, that's like definitely for a purpose with regards to like furthering the plot and like explaining someone's feelings, but it is a little bit darker and more like tumultuous, you might really like this. I would definitely recommend it. So that was pretty short, but intentionally so. I'm sure if I looked at my list of all the books I'd read this year, I'd come up with more like favorites. But I feel like it's really valuable to just say like, hey, here's what I actively remember and what stuck with me. Because I think that those are the best books to recommend because they might stick with people a little better. I hope you had a wonderful reading year, and I wish you a happy reading year for 2022. Until next time, happy reading for 2022.